Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of TBR. I'm George Binns, and the guest this evening is Paul Guanci. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks, George. Always good to be here in the BevCam studios.
Pleasure. And as a result, you used to be very active in the city, at least at the political level, and you got smart and retired. You had enough of that fun. And still, I think as an entrepreneur in town, you're in touch with a lot of that's going on. And the question keeps coming up, and I keep asking it anyway, is what's the state of the city? And I think one of the best answers I got was from Wes Slate. And the character of the city, as far as he's concerned, is change. So there's a lot of changes in the works. The 5-story building on Cabot Street, all the work that's been done on Rantoul Street, the changing of the zoning. We got a city charter that's coming up for discussion. So with all these changes, are we heading in the right direction?
Well, you know, sitting back for the past 2 years, because a year and a half, I haven't been in office since December of 2021. Although people still think that I'm in office because I get numerous calls about streets getting plowed, sidewalks getting fixed, and I'll get, well, you mean you're not on the city council anymore? And I'll say, no, I'm not, but I'm happy to help you. He says, oh, yeah, you can get things done still. Everybody knows you. But, you know, I pay attention to what's going on, and I think that what I hear from members of the public that things might be moving a little too fast, developmental-wise. I think Matt St. Hilaire's ordinance change about capping buildings at 45 feet as opposed to 55, or even...
he wanted to do originally 35.
35, right.
Yeah.
So at least it's some bit of a compromise. You know, when I started back in 2000 on the city council, the population of Beverly was 40,000. It looks like now the city is going to rush up and almost be 50,000 people once all this building is done. Can we handle that? Can our schools handle that? Can our police and fire handle that? I'm not too sure. I know the schools are crowded. The middle school is crowded. And it was built for 1,300 people. There's about 1,500 people there now. I think
that's really a problem with the state, that they won't let you plan ahead and build extra space. And they did it to us on the high school, and they did it to us on the middle school. That they immediately cause a problem,
right?
That you're alluding to.
But we are a growing city. People want to live here in Beverly. It has so much to offer. We have the coastline. We have an airport, 5 railroad stations. That transit-oriented development was pushed by Governor Baker. I'm sure Governor Healy will push it also. But you have to think as eventually those people that live there are going to want to buy a house, maybe start a family, and then you're going to have more kids in the schools, which is great as long as you can handle them.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the problems that I don't think anybody's really thinking very deeply about is what do you do about the traffic? And it really came to a head this year when they shut down the 2 bridges. Now we got traffic in all the neighborhoods, and everybody's, oh, yeah, we got too many cars going around. And this was one of the comments that came out when they were talking about the Bass River overlay, that, okay, we're going to put this big condo up there, or a series of condos for 1,400 new units. Where are you going to put the cars? How are you going to get them in and out of the city? And I think this is one of the problems, that all these developments sound good in themselves, but they're only one piece of a city. I think you recall that Thomas Ford at one time was being considered to be converted into a grocery store, a supermarket.
Right, yeah, back in the day it was going to be Trader Joe's.
Yeah, and it never happened. And the net result is people that live around the train station, they got an easy walk to the station, but it's a heck of a long walk to get some groceries.
Sure.
And the same thing is true of using the train station as access to the Cummings Center. It's a long walk, especially on a day like today when it's rainy and snowy. And so I see some of the ideas being proposed as too narrowly focused, and they don't look at the total city. And how do we get around that? How do we get the infrastructure to match the building?
Well, everything looks great on paper. When you're trying to build housing, you're trying to help the environment and things like that. Bike lanes are great. You want to make Beverly walkable. But I mean, the bottom line, people are going to have cars, and they're going to need places to park.
Yeah.
The zoning changed years ago. It used to be a space and a half or 2 spaces per unit on the Rantoul Street developments. Now it's only 1. You have 2 people living in there that they aren't married, or they're not a couple, but they have 2 different cars and they go 2 different places every day. Where are they going to park? Yeah. Parking is always going to be a problem here in Beverly if we continue to develop at the pace that we are now.
Yeah. And the other part of this game is that there is no public transportation to really speak of. Yeah, Katia runs a bus every so often,
right.
But for instance, your sub shop, it's on the corner of Elliott Street and Cabot, Route 62. It's pretty well accessible by car, except you don't have a lot of parking space available. So the issue is, how do you see the impact of converting that parking lot behind the dollar store into a 5-story? Is that going to impact your business?
Well, I don't know if it's going to impact mine. It's funny you say that we don't have a lot of parking, but if you look at other places, I think I have 14 spaces. A couple are for the rental units upstairs. But if you were to open up a business or a food service business on Rantoul Street, there's no parking.
Yeah.
You'd have to park in the garage and walk. And that's a big... That takes a lot of guts to open up something with absolutely zero parking, because people are going to drive by if they can't figure it out. And everybody uses that parking lot behind the dollar store, and eliminating that would make things just that much more difficult.
So we get into the situation where, yeah, it's great to have a lot of these new buildings, but like you point out, they're changing in the requirements from 2 parking spaces per unit, assuming you're going to have 2 cars. And even if it's a married couple, to afford some of these units, both of them have to be working, and the chances of both of them working someplace that's accessible by the railroad trains, that's a premise. It's a long stretch.
Of course it is.
So they're going to have a car. Both of them will have a car.
And you're looking, some of those rents at the Beverly Crossing building, I think a 2-bedroom is almost $3,500 a month.
Yeah.
It's bigger than most people's mortgages.
Yeah. So we're in a situation where we're growing space, but not the infrastructure. And I guess, how does the city get around that? You watched the city function for, 10 years? Or 20 years, I guess it was.
Yeah, 20.
So we had Scott Hausman give us a lecture one time on the city depends upon new growth to finance anything new and different, because the budget based on the taxes just covers what's already in place. So we're getting into this game, I think, of in order to do something new and different, like for the environment, like for walkability, bike lanes, or any of that stuff, we have to have some new growth to finance it. And with the new growth, we add to the problem that we were trying to solve, and it seems like a snowball. It keeps going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, I would agree. And we've always pushed the new growth in places where it had the least impact on residential homeowners here in the city of Beverly. Back in the 80s, and early 90s, we blew out the Airport Road and Cherry Hill. And I know in the past 5 or 6 years, we've had 4 really good companies come to Beverly: High Res Bio, Krona, Freudenberg Medical, and who's the other one? Harmonic Drive.
Yeah.
All of them came from out of town to relocate here in Beverly in brand new buildings. And that's the type of growth that creates great jobs for the city. And it's, I don't want to use the word segregated, but it's separated from, the hustle and bustle of a downtown.
Yeah. And the same thing right now, I just saw in the paper, they're spending, $800,000 and change to build a bridge over 128 to get to Dunham Road.
So that's just the study, $850,000 for that. And we've done that study. I know you know Neil and Douglas probably throughout the years. He's pretty smart, and it was he and Bill Scanlon designed that interchange in Bill's office over 3 or 4 months. Mm-hmm. And I don't understand. That's still there. I don't understand why the city would have to spend that much more money to do it over again. There's only so much land there. There's only so many landowners that you would have to deal with. We're lucky that Cummings is one of them now.
Yeah.
Perhaps they could help fund it. But because it's been so long, that was always Brimble Ave Phase 2. We're down on the state's list of projects. Mm-hmm. So that's something that probably we won't see here in Beverly until 2026 or 2027.
Well, that gets to the other point, back to the bridge situation. It's totally out of control of the city. It's a state bridge. And every time I talk to somebody about it, all I hear is, well, we can't do this, we can't do that, we can't do 3 other things because of permitting requirements and environmental requirements. And the net result is the people on that side of the Bass River are going to be impacted until 5 to 13 years from now. And I think this is a kind of an issue where we need to get some sort of support from the state or even from the federal government to make something happen now. And I don't see this happening.
George, it's a tremendous inconvenience for people that live in Ryleside. Not only because of the hassle and because of the gas. Instead of coming over the bridge, they have to drive all the way around, come down Elliott Street, get in a mess over there. I don't understand. I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I don't understand why it would take so long to build just a temporary bridge that's supposed to be ready in this. I was talking to Councilor Rotundo the other day, in the spring of 2024 or 2025, he said. But the only good thing about the Hall-Whitaker Bridge not being open, it's forced the city to take a step back on that Bass River overlay project. Without that bridge, you can't even think about adding more units there on the Bass River.
Well, the Bass River overlay has been in the works for about 10 years.
Sure.
So this is just another thorn in the side that something just isn't gelling. And I get concerned that these projects get brought up and advertised and touted, and we talk about them, and like the Hale-Whitaker Bridge, nothing's being done. Congressman Moulton came into town, had a session with the mayor, and he was saying the bridge already exists. Why do you need a new permit? Well, that's an interesting thought. What's the next step?
Right, to the bottom of it.
Who's making the next step? And you mentioned, okay, you're not an engineer, I am. And it turns out that, I used this thing probably too many times, but anyway, it turns out that when I was part of the government's program to send the big kids to camp, I was a combat engineer. Well, that's okay. There's this thing called the Bailey Bridge that combat engineers put together very quickly. And the neat thing about it is the biggest piece on it is picked up by 8 guys and carried into place. And I know it can be done because I was one of the 8 guys one time. So that, and they had the kind of Bailey Bridge, they replaced a section of I-95 in Connecticut when the storm took it out. So I've raised this question, and the answer I get back, well, that was a real serious problem when you take out a section of I-95. Well, people are inconvenienced and riled side, that doesn't count. And again, it's the issue of how do we get somebody involved that's going to say, I want an answer. What's the problem? Who's the problem? How do we make something happen? This is the part I'm missing.
Right.
Hopefully, your experience in government, you can tell me. How do you make it happen?
Well, it's all about connections that you make when you're in government. And our Mayor Mike Hale has a very good relationship with Kim Driscoll, who's the lieutenant governor. If I saw Michael, I would ask him Michael, why aren't you reaching out to Kim and Maura Healey? You have relationships with both of them, and find out really what's the definitive answer. Why isn't this happening now, and what can we do to expedite the process?
Yeah.
At that level, people seem to take care of each other.
Yeah.
If you watch things go on in the House and the Senate here in the state.
Oh, yeah. And so I guess it just comes down to you got to get the right guy in the right place at the right time to do it. Slightly different subject, back to talking about you got a business in town. You're part of the vibrant community. There's a lot of small shops set up to sell food and beverages and snacks and that kind of thing.
And a little retail, too, on Cabot Street now.
Pardon?
There's a few retail outlets on Cabot Street. Now we have a bookstore, a gift shop, and things like that.
Yeah. What's the saturation point to a downtown? Do you think we're reaching it? Or what do you think is missing?
What is missing? Saturation point, I don't know. I mean, it's never going to be like it was back in the 60s and 70s where you had department stores on Cabot Street. You had Grant, you had Almies, you had Alcorn's, which was a shoe store that everybody went to buy their shoes, and there was probably 6 or 7 other ones there. Obviously, that's gone. They went to the malls, and now people shop online. It's only
the malls are going disappearing.
Yeah, it's only a matter of time before somebody comes in and wants to make the Liberty Tree Mall apartments. Saturation point, I don't know. I mean, you never want to discourage anybody to want to go into business by themselves, but it hasn't gotten easier, especially since COVID. If you're a small business owner, you're the business, you're the face, and you're there all the time, more than you ever have been.
Yeah.
The increase in minimum wage to $15 an hour, that affects a lot of small businesses like myself, because you've got your solid full-time people that help you out, and then there's a big drop to the other type of employee you need. You need those young workers that are coming in for the first time. They're going to learn how to work, and $15 an hour is a lot to pay them. I know that I went to the State House a couple of times with Brad Hill, the former state rep in Ipswich, to talk about a teenage minimum wage, $10 or $11 an hour, to get people get their feet wet. Employers can afford that, and then you have young employees who feel helpful, as opposed to being turned away for not getting a job because small business can only afford so much payroll.
Yeah.
But we have a nice bakery. Delphine's Cafe opened up last year. She does a nice job, but she's there all the time. Amazing Pizza recently opened up. They do a pretty good job. I don't know how Nick Paris does it, running 3 places on Cabot Street. He's got Soma, he has Ellis Square Social, and Rapture. It's a lot of work. You have to really love what you do. And all the downtown businesses have a pretty good following.
Yeah.
So maybe we're not to the saturation point yet, but it's going to get to the point where it's going to get harder and harder to be a small businessman, that people may just give up.
Yeah. Well, you never did finish the comment of what do you think's missing? If you were going to start a new business
If I was going to start a new business,
in downtown Beverly, what would it be?
some place to get socks and underwear. How's that? We always had, in North Beverly, we had Zayre's, and then it was Ames. There's not that go-to store for people to just buy regular items nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the dollar store for people that need something quick. But retail, any kind of really non-specialty retail isn't going to work in a downtown nowadays.
Well, then you're competing with Amazon.
Right, you're competing with Amazon, and we all see the Amazon trucks on the...
And the Prime trucks running all over the place.
all over the place.
And
I question how many times they're at my house during the week.
well, that and Walmart is also in the business too of competing with Amazon. And,
Sure, your big box stores.
Yeah.
Why would you go to shop at Target when you can buy something online?
Yeah. And with Prime, you can get it almost instantly, so there's not that demand that, well, I got to have it now, so I just run over to the store and get it.
Right.
Kind of thing. To some extent, that helps alleviate the traffic problem, but not enough because people still have to go to work every day.
Right. And the traffic in Beverly has gotten better. I mean, it's nice that finally that Henry's intersection, the McKay Street intersection, and the one at the bridge are done. That makes things a little easier, but to do those three all at the same time really created a lot of traffic.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a running battle, too, with all this construction on Rantoul Street, that every time they build something, they're blocking the road somewhat, bringing the pieces in and out.
Right.
And so this constant building is also a constant traffic problem.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, I have to claim myself as guilty, too, because I was working with Mayor Scanlon as president of the council. We built all these schools, and it's nearly impossible to get from the Henry's intersection to downtown Beverly in less than a half an hour during prime school drop-off and pickup time.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the problems with going away from the neighborhood schools.
Right.
That all of a sudden they become big operations. And one of the concerns that came up when we were considering the middle school was when you start to put the fifth grade in with the seventh, eighth, and grades, parents get a little nervous. My fifth grader really fit in with those big kids, and there gets to be more of a demand for drop-off and pickup because you don't want them on the bus.
No, you don't want them on the bus. And I was one of those parents that had that concern about having your fifth grader in school with eighth graders. They did a really good job about separating inside the building, but the bus was always a problem.
Yeah.
I was fortunate that my youngest, she got fifth grade. She was the last fifth grade class in the elementary school, so
Yeah.
I didn't have to deal with it, but it caused a lot of anxiety for other parents.
Yeah. So we get to these situations that there's all these various problems around the city. Hopefully somebody's working on them, but some of the solutions that are already forced into place leave us a little bit concerned.
Right.
And the road situation has always been one of the concerns. I can remember going to one of the lobster fests down at Lynch Park, ran into an old city alderman. It goes that far back. And he
was it, Bill Gelwick?
No, before that even. And he was coming back from Florida. But made the comment that, hey, you're in Beverly and the car starts to bounce. So, again, these issues about services and how do you get them and how much can we afford to keep fixing these things. And I noticed in my neighborhood down along Odell Avenue especially, they're putting in new gas lines again. Now, it's great that the gas company is replacing the gas lines because after that fiasco up in, was it Lowell or Lawrence, one of those towns, it's a good idea that we get rid of some of these old lines and get in some new ones. But there's always this constantly going through the neighborhoods, tearing up the streets and putting in a new line and
then patching it up.
Yeah. And I guess the question is it ever finished?
I don't think it's never finished. Streets and sidewalks are the number one complaint that a city councilor faces. People want their sidewalk fixed or their street done, and there's just so many miles of road here in the city of Beverly. But it's constant. It's not like we could just shut down and rebuild Beverly like Celebration, Florida, outside of Disney World. They went in, they built everything as a square, and it's done.
Yeah.
You know, our streets are windy. Our streets not grid-like. It's that's it. I don't envy Mike Collins, the director of engineering and public works, as to what streets to do every year.
Yeah.
There's a rating system, but
they explained it to me one time that they've got a special vehicle that's got a sensor in the tires that as they drive around, it measures how bouncy the ride is.
Yeah.
And they come up with a rating as to what roads need to be fixed. And they recently fixed Odell Avenue in my neighborhood.
Oh, we've been working on that one for years.
Yeah, I know. It's in great shape. It looks gorgeous as far as the street goes. And I drive on Odell Avenue, and then I go around the corner and get on Conant Street, and oh boy,
right.
Back to the good old days.
Conant Street is going to be finished pretty soon, though.
Yeah. So some of the major streets are getting fixed, and it's never the right ones, I guess.
You know, I had a constituent that lived on Odell Ave who is a snowbird now. He goes to Florida in the winter, but he started asking me about when they were going to pave Odell in 1999 when I first ran for office, and I knocked on his door. So a couple of years ago when it was finally done, I was like, oh, this is great. So the next time he came in for a sandwich, I said, we finally got Odell finished. He says, yeah, now I'm in Florida half the year. So,
yeah. Well, the other things that keep coming up right now is we got an election coming up in the near future. Supposedly on the election is going to be the charter. And I guess one of the big issues on the charter is 4 years for the mayor and 2 new what do they call it? Not city council.
School committee members at large.
At large, yeah. Thank you. What do you think?
Well, I've always liked a 4-year term. If you run for any office, I mean, I understand that you don't want a 4-year term for city councilor. Because somebody might not like the job, and then you're stuck for 4 years. But if you have somebody that's serious that wants to be the mayor of the city of Beverly, you need that time to get your plan in motion. If you're elected mayor, and then you start in January, you give your welcome address to the city, and then 6 months later you have to start running for re-election again. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it's a lot not only on the candidate, but it's a lot on your supporters that, hey, you know, we just wrote your check, we just maxed out, or we were just holding signs a couple of weeks ago, we got to start doing it again. So I think the 4-year term, some people will say it didn't work out in Salem, but, you know, I think that Kim Driscoll did the best she could, and having a 4-year term gave her the ability to do that. Yeah. As opposed to always constantly running for re-election.
Yeah.
And I know my friend Bill Scanlon, and obviously through the years we've always had small disagreements with him. We all have. But if he didn't have to run that every 2 years, he'd probably still be mayor. Because he loved the job, but it was that every 2 year grind about running for office again.
Okay.
So it's good that it's going to go out to the voters and they'll decide. I think that that'll come out favorably. Years ago, I think that they had at-large school committee members. You were on the school committee. You don't remember that?
We didn't have.
You didn't have them.
No.
Okay.
That was back in '67, '68.
All right.
Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we've had about a half hour's worth of fun. Believe
That's
it or
it.
not.
Oh, talk to you all day, George.
So we'll have to do it again.
All right.
And thanks for watching. And again, if you get to the end of the credits, you'll notice this is my email address. You've got some questions, some comments, please feel free to send me an email. And if you would like to join the show, we can always make room for you here at the table. And again, thanks for watching and stay tuned.